Elena Rosewood handed over $5 for an abandoned orphanage that had been shuttered for 23 years. The building looked like it belonged in a nightmare, not a real estate listing. But her rescue dog, Birch, refused to step inside, and what Elena discovered within those crumbling walls would baffle investigators and skeptics alike for decades to come, with no rational explanation ever found. Elena Rosewood stared at the cashier's check in her hand. $5. The woman behind the counter, Mrs. Adelaide Finch, slid the deed across with trembling fingers and eyes that refused to meet Elena's. "You understand this is final?" Mrs. Finch asked for the fourth time, her voice barely above a whisper. Elena nodded. She'd driven 3 hours from Portland after spotting the listing online at 2 in the morning. An entire building for less than the cost of lunch. She'd assumed it was a scam. But when she'd called, Mrs. Finch had answered on the first ring, as if waiting. "Yes, it's real. The county needs someone to take ownership. We're desperate. When can you come?" Now, watching Mrs. Finch's hands shake, Elena felt the first cold thread of doubt. "Is there something wrong with the building?" Elena asked directly. Mrs. Finch's pen paused. Her gray eyes finally lifted, meeting Elena's for just a moment before darting away. "The structure is sound. Inspected 8 months ago. It's just been difficult to maintain. The county would prefer someone willing to work with what's there, without asking too many questions." The phrasing sent a chill down Elena's spine. "What history?" "Nothing that would affect the building's integrity," Mrs. Finch said quickly. She pushed the completed deed across the counter. "It's yours now, Ms. Rosewood." But she didn't smile. Her expression showed only relief mixed with something that looked disturbingly like pity. 6 weeks earlier, Elena's life had imploded. The architectural firm where she'd worked for 12 years had downsized. Her apartment lease had ended. At 37, she found herself with a severance check and a dream she'd buried too long, buying and restoring a historic property. When she'd seen the listing for the Hollowbrook home for foundlings, something had clicked. An orphanage, she could transform it into affordable artist studios, a place that honored its original purpose. The location was perfect, Pine Haven, Oregon, remote but accessible. She'd expected negotiations. Instead, the county had accepted within 90 minutes. Now, driving through Pine Haven with Birch panting in the passenger seat, Elena noticed reactions. The gas station attendant had backed away when she mentioned Hollowbrook. The diner waitress had dropped a coffee mug. "You bought that place," the waitress had whispered, eyes wide. The orphanage rose from an overgrown clearing like something from a Gothic novel. 3 stories of weathered red brick and steep slate roofs, with a central tower. Tall, narrow windows stared down like disapproving eyes. Ivy covered the eastern wall completely. It was beautiful. Haunting. Perfect. Elena parked and climbed out, but Birch hadn't followed. The dog sat rigid in the truck, staring at the building. His ears lay flat. A low, continuous whine emanated from his throat. "Birch? Come on, boy." But when she opened the passenger door, Birch pressed himself against the far side, trembling. In 3 years together, through thunderstorms and fireworks, she'd never seen him display this kind of fear. Elena grabbed her flashlight and pry bar. "Stay here if you need to. I'll just be a few minutes." The dog whined but didn't move. Elena walked toward the orphanage, and tried to ignore the way her skin prickled as she climbed the damaged steps. Act 2, the unsettling investigation. The front door wasn't locked. It swung inward with a long, low creak. Inside, darkness waited. Elena stepped across the threshold and was hit by the smell. Mold and rot, expected. But underneath lay something else, metallic and cold, like old coins dug from graves. Her flashlight cut through dust, revealing an entrance hall. A wide staircase rose to upper floors, the banister carved with elegant details. The walls were water-stained in patterns that looked disturbingly organic, branching like veins, spreading like reaching fingers. Elena moved forward, her footsteps echoing strangely. Not simple sounds, but something more complex, as if each step produced multiple echoes from different distances. The acoustics were wrong. To her left, a common room. Small wooden chairs in neat rows, covered in thick dust. A blackboard, remember, good children are, the rest had been erased. To her right, administrative offices. Elena entered, noting the filing cabinets and desk buried under debris. Then her flashlight caught something wrong. The wood paneling on the back wall didn't quite match. The grain ran differently. The color was a shade darker. Elena ran her fingers along the seam. There, a gap, barely a quarter inch. She wedged her pry bar into the space and pulled. With a sharp crack, the panel came free, revealing a steel door painted dark green. The lock had been forced open from the inside, metal bent outward. Elena's heart hammered. She pulled the door open. Beyond it, a staircase descended into darkness. Cold air rushed up, carrying that metallic smell intensified, mixed with old paper and something like ozone. She descended. 27 steps. At the bottom, a corridor with concrete walls. 3 doors, all closed. At the end, a larger door with a keypad lock that no longer glowed. Elena tried the first door. A small room with a child-sized bed frame, a metal chair bolted to the floor, and hundreds of scratches on the wall. Not random, deliberate marks forming patterns. The second room was identical. The third room held filing cabinets. 4 of them, labeled with years, 1952 to 1960. 1961 to 1970, 1971 to 1980. 1981 to 2001. In the center, a desk with a locked drawer. Elena used her pry bar. The drawer popped open easily. Inside, a single ledger bound in cracked black leather. The handwriting was precise, almost mechanical. Hollowbrook Home for Foundlings. Classified records, Tier 5 clearance only. Director, Dr. Nathaniel Graves. 1952 to 2001. These children arrived from nowhere. They belong to nowhere. What we do here is necessary. What we learn here must never leave these walls. May God forgive the mercy we cannot show. Elena turned the page. A list. Names, dates, and codes. Subject 001 Lily R. / manifestation date, June 1952 / origin, spontaneous / status, terminated. Subject 002 Thomas K. / manifestation date, June 1952 / origin, spontaneous / status, terminated. The list continued. 47 names spanning 49 years. All marked origin, spontaneous. All marked status, terminated. And next to each name, in faded red ink, a single word. Anomaly. ACT 3, the antagonist emerges. Elena read through files that rewrote everything she knew. Medical records showing impossible physiology. Blood types that didn't exist. Brain scans revealing structures that shouldn't be present. Incident reports describing physics violations, children existing in 2 places simultaneously, shadows moving independently, presence causing clocks to run backward. Photographs of children staring at cameras with 2 knowing expressions. Their eyes reflected light wrong, showing colors that shouldn't exist in human irises. One file made Elena's breath catch. Subject 044 Isabella R. / manifestation date, March 1998 / origin, spontaneous. The photograph showed a girl, maybe 7, with dark curly hair and deep-set eyes. Elena's eyes. Her mother's chin. Her grandmother's nose. March 1998. The same month Elena's parents had taken her out of school for 3 weeks. The same month her mother had started having nightmares. Elena was still sitting there when she heard footsteps above. A woman's voice called down. "Ms. Rosewood? We know you're down there. We know what you found." Elena climbed the stairs. 3 people waited. 2 men in dark suits. And a woman, perhaps 60, with silver hair and pale blue eyes that assessed Elena like a specimen. "I'm Dr. Cordelia Ashford. I represent the Hollowbrook Foundation, the organization that managed this facility until 2001. You've discovered the classified records. What is this place?" Elena demanded. "What did you do to those children?" "We saved them," Dr. Ashford replied. "And we saved the world from them. Those children weren't orphans. They simply appeared. Materialized out of thin air. No origin. No explanation. You experimented on them. We studied them. We attempted to understand what they were and what threat they might pose. Our methods were necessary. You killed them. The files say terminated. The files use terminology that may seem harsh, but these entities weren't entirely human. They were something else. And yes, when study was complete, they were returned to whatever place they'd come from. You're insane. I'm realistic. The Foundation is prepared to pay you $2 million for this property and everything in it. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement. And you'll walk away. $2 million. Elena thought of the girl in the photograph. Isabella. The impossible resemblance. What if I refuse? Dr. Ashford's expression cooled. Then you'll discover that some knowledge carries consequences. People who ask questions about Hollowbrook tend to experience difficulties. Accidents that appear entirely natural. The Foundation has operated since 1952. We're extraordinarily good at protecting our secrets. I need time, Elena said. You have until tomorrow at sunset. After that, our methods become less pleasant. They walked out. Elena stood alone, the Isabella file inside her jacket. Outside, Birch was barking frantically. Elena ran to the window. The dog stood at the clearing's edge, hackles raised, staring at the tree line. And there, just visible in the shadows, Elena saw them. Children. Standing among the trees. Dozens of them, their forms slightly translucent, their eyes reflecting the sunset like mirrors. They stood perfectly still, watching. Then, as one, they turned and walked deeper into the forest, fading like mist. Elena pressed her hand against the cold glass and understood she'd uncovered something that defied explanation. Something that had been waiting 23 years. Something that, according to the files, should have been terminated decades ago but somehow, impossibly, had survived. Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat in her truck parked in the orphanage driveway, the Isabella file spread across the dashboard, reading by the dome light while Birch pressed against her side, still trembling. The file was more detailed than she'd initially realized. Medical examinations conducted weekly. Psychological evaluations. Incident reports documenting what the doctors called manifestation events. On April 3, 1998, Isabella had made all the lights in her room explode simultaneously. On June 12, she'd been found standing in the hallway at 3 a.m., sleepwalking, except security footage showed her still in bed at the same time. On August 27, her room temperature had dropped to minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit while she slept, frost coating the walls, her breath visible, yet she'd shown no signs of hypothermia. The final entry was dated September 14, 1998, Subject 044 scheduled for termination procedure. Dr. Graves has approved final extraction protocol. But there was a handwritten note in different ink, added later, Subject 044 disappeared from secured containment September 13, 98. All facility searches negative. Presumed spontaneous demanifestation. Case closed. Elena's hands shook as she read that last line. The girl had escaped. Or vanished. Or something else entirely. She thought about her parents' behavior that fall. Her mother's nightmares had started in September. Her father had begun therapy in October. And Elena herself had started having strange dreams around that time, dreams of a girl with her face, standing in dark rooms, whispering words Elena could never quite remember upon waking. As dawn broke, Elena made her decision. She wouldn't take Dr. Ashford's money. She wouldn't sign away the truth. These children, these anomalies, whatever they'd been, deserved to have their story told. They deserved justice, even if it came decades too late. But she couldn't do it alone. Elena drove into Pinehaven as the town was waking up. She needed allies, people who might know the truth, people who might have their own reasons to want Hollowbrook's secrets exposed. Her first stop was the Pinehaven Public Library, a small brick building on Main Street. The librarian, a woman in her 70s with kind eyes and gray hair in a long braid, looked up as Elena entered. "Help you find something?" "I'm researching the Hollowbrook home," Elena said carefully. "I'm the new owner." The librarian's expression shifted, warmth replaced by something guarded. "Are you now?" "I found some disturbing records. I think the children there were mistreated. Possibly killed. I'm trying to find anyone who might have worked there, or had family there, or knows what really happened." For a long moment, the librarian simply stared at her. Then she stood, walked to the door, locked it, and flipped the sign to closed. "My name is Margaret Holloway," she said quietly. "And I've been waiting 23 years for someone to ask the right questions." Margaret led Elena to a back room filled with boxes. "Local history archive," she explained. "Officially, anyway. But I've kept other things here. Things people wanted forgotten." She pulled out a box labeled Hollowbrook 1995 to 2001 and opened it. Inside, newspaper clippings, photographs, handwritten testimonies. "I was a social worker," Margaret said. "I visited Hollowbrook monthly to check on the children's welfare. I saw things I couldn't explain. Children who looked different each time I visited, as if they were aging backwards or not aging at all. Staff who seemed terrified of their own charges. And Dr. Graves, who always watched me with eyes that said he knew I suspected something but couldn't prove anything." She pulled out a photograph. "This was taken in 1997, my last official visit before they revoked my access. Look at the children." Elena studied the photo. 20 children standing in rows, all wearing identical gray uniforms. But something was wrong with the image. The children's faces were slightly blurred, as if they'd moved during the exposure, except the rest of the photo was perfectly sharp. And their shadows, Elena looked closer. The shadows didn't quite match the children's positions. Some shadows were too long. Others seemed to fall in the wrong direction. "I tried to report it," Margaret continued. "But my supervisors told me I was imagining things. Then I started receiving threats. Anonymous notes. Dead animals left on my porch. My car was vandalized 3 times in 2 weeks. I got the message. Stop asking questions or face consequences." "Did you stop?" Elena asked. Margaret's smile was bitter. "I stopped officially. But I kept watching. I documented everything I could from a distance. And when Hollowbrook closed in 2001, I made sure to preserve every piece of evidence I could find before they destroyed it all." "There are others," Elena said. "I saw them last night. Children in the woods. Dozens of them." Margaret nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something she'd suspected. The termination procedures didn't work. Or they worked differently than Dr. Graves intended. The children didn't die. They just changed. Became something else. I've seen them over the years, always at dusk, always at the edge of the forest. Watching. Waiting. Waiting for what? For someone to tell their story. For justice. For revenge. I don't know which." Elena pulled out the Isabella file. "I think one of them is connected to me. To my family." Margaret studied the photograph, then looked up at Elena with sudden recognition. "My God. The resemblance. You could be her sister. My parents took me out of school for 3 weeks in March 1998. They never explained why. And this girl appeared at Hollowbrook that same month. You think you're related?" "I don't know what to think. But I know I can't let Dr. Ashford bury this again." Margaret was quiet for a moment, then pulled out her phone. There are 3 others. People who worked at Hollowbrook or lost family members there. People who've been waiting for a chance to expose the truth. I'll call them. Can you meet tonight? Elena nodded. Where? The orphanage. Where else? If we're going to do this, we do it where it all happened. ACT 5, Building Alliance. They gathered at sunset, Elena, Margaret, and 3 others who arrived in separate vehicles, each one looking nervous but determined. Thomas Whitmore, 74, former maintenance worker at Hollowbrook. I saw things in those basement rooms, he said, his voice rough with age and cigarettes. Heard screams that didn't sound human. Saw Dr. Graves come out of those rooms with blood on his coat and madness in his eyes. Carolyn Fletcher, 62, whose younger brother had been placed at Hollowbrook in 1989. Daniel was 8 years old. Normal kid, just orphaned after our parents died in a car crash. They took him for evaluation and said he showed anomalous characteristics. I never saw him again. They said he'd been transferred to another facility, but they wouldn't tell me where. And James Keller, 59, former Pinehaven Sheriff's deputy. I was called to Hollowbrook twice for incidents. Once in 1994, once in 1999. Both times, I found children who looked like they'd been tortured. Both times, Dr. Graves showed me federal paperwork that classified everything beyond my clearance level. Both times, I was told to forget what I'd seen. But you don't forget children's eyes when they look at you like they've given up hope. They stood in the orphanage's main hall as darkness gathered outside, 5 people bound by different connections to the same terrible truth. Dr. Ashford offered me $2 million to stay quiet, Elena said. She gave me until tonight to decide. I'm guessing that means they're coming back soon. They'll try to intimidate you first, James said. Then, if that doesn't work, they'll escalate. These people have unlimited resources and no conscience. Then we need to act first, Elena said. Margaret, you have documentation? Everything I could save. Testimonies, photographs, medical records I copied before they were destroyed. Thomas, Carolyn, would you be willing to give statements? On record, on camera? Both nodded. Then we film everything tonight. We upload it everywhere, social media, news outlets, every platform we can find. We make this impossible to suppress. They'll sue you, James warned. They'll destroy your reputation. They might do worse. Elena thought of Isabella's file, of the girl who'd looked like her, who'd suffered in these rooms, who'd somehow escaped or transformed or died, and whose story had been buried for 23 years. Let them try. They spent the next hour setting up. Elena used her phone to film testimonies. Margaret spread documents across the floor, photographing each one. Thomas walked them through the basement, showing them the rooms where he'd heard screams, where he'd cleaned up blood that appeared without any visible source. They were uploading the first videos when they heard vehicles outside. 3 black SUVs pulled into the driveway, headlights cutting through the darkness. Dr. Ashford emerged from the first vehicle, followed by 6 men in dark suits. They moved with military precision, surrounding the orphanage. Elena and her group gathered in the main hall as Dr. Ashford entered, her expression ice cold. Ms. Rosewood. I see you've chosen poorly. And you've involved others in your poor choice. We've chosen to tell the truth, Elena said. And we've already started. Videos are uploading. Documents are being sent to journalists. By morning, the whole world will know what happened here. Dr. Ashford's composure cracked for just a moment, fury flashing in her pale eyes. You have no idea what you're interfering with. Those children weren't victims. They were threats. Spontaneous manifestations that violated every law of nature. We contained them. We studied them. We protected humanity from what they might become. You tortured and murdered children, Margaret said, her voice shaking with decades of suppressed rage. Don't dress it up as protection. Children? Dr. Ashford laughed, the sound harsh. They looked like children. But subject analysis showed they were something else entirely. Things that appeared in our reality from somewhere else, wearing human shapes but fundamentally alien. My brother was human, Carolyn said. He was a scared 8-year-old boy who needed help, not experimentation. Your brother disappeared from a hospital bed with no doors or windows opened, Dr. Ashford shot back. He materialized in a locked psychiatric ward with no explanation. He was an anomaly, and anomalies must be contained. Elena stepped forward. The children in the woods. They're still here, aren't they? Still watching. Still waiting. Dr. Ashford's face paled. You've seen them. Last night. Dozens of them. That's impossible. The termination protocols. Failed, Elena finished. Whatever you did to them, it didn't work the way you intended. They survived. They changed. And they're still here. As if in response to her words, the lights in the orphanage began to flicker. All of them, simultaneously, pulsing in a rhythm that felt almost like a heartbeat. Dr. Ashford's men moved closer together, hands reaching for weapons. We need to leave. Now. Not until you admit what you did, Elena said. Not until you face what you created. The temperature dropped. Elena's breath came out in visible puffs. Frost began forming on the windows, spreading in patterns that looked like reaching hands. And then they appeared. They came through the walls like they were made of mist. Children, dozens of them, manifesting in the main hall with eyes that glowed with soft, impossible light. Some looked exactly as they had in the photographs Elena had seen. Others were different, changed, transformed into something between human and something else entirely. Dr. Ashford's men raised their weapons, but the guns wouldn't fire. The children simply looked at them, and the weapons crumbled to rust in their hands. One child stepped forward. Elena recognized her immediately. Isabella. Subject 044. The girl who looked like her, who had vanished from containment 23 years ago. Hello, Elena, the girl said, her voice echoing strangely. We've been waiting for you. Are you real? Elena whispered. Are you my sister? My cousin? Are we related? Isabella smiled sadly. In a way. I'm what you might have become. What part of you did become, briefly, before your parents found a way to separate us. To push me back into the space between spaces and keep you fully in this reality. Elena's mind reeled. I don't understand. Some children are born straddling two worlds, Isabella explained. Most resolve into one reality or the other. But sometimes, rarely, the split remains. You became fully real. I became fully other. Your parents brought you here, desperate for help. Dr. Graves saw an opportunity to study the phenomenon. He tried to capture me, experiment on me, terminate me. But he failed to understand what we are. The other children moved closer, forming a circle around Dr. Ashford and her men. The doctor's face had gone white. You're not here for revenge, Margaret said, understanding dawning. You're here for witness. Yes, Isabella said. We can't leave this place until our story is told. Until the world knows we existed. Until we're acknowledged as real, not anomalies to be terminated. She turned to Dr. Ashford. You tried to erase us from reality itself. But we persisted. We remained. And now, finally, someone with the courage to see us has come. Dr. Ashford's composure shattered completely. Your abominations. Mistakes in the fabric of existence. We're children, Isabella said simply. And we deserve to be remembered. The lights steadied. The frost on the windows began to fade. And one by one, the children started to dissolve, their forms becoming translucent, then transparent, then gone, but not before each one looked at Elena and her companions with expressions of gratitude. Isabella was the last to fade. She reached out, and for just a moment, her hand touched Elena's. It felt like touching cold starlight, like pressing against the boundary between dreams and waking. Thank you, Isabella whispered. For seeing us. For refusing to let us be forgotten. Wait, Elena said desperately. Will I see you again? In dreams, maybe. In the spaces between thoughts. We're part of you, Elena. We always have been. And now we can finally rest. She faded like morning mist, leaving only the faint scent of ozone and something sweeter, something that reminded Elena of childhood and safety and home. Dr. Ashford and her men left without another word. What could they say? What threat could they make against people who'd witnessed the impossible? By morning, the story had spread across the internet. Videos of testimonies. Scanned documents. Photographs of the children. News outlets picked it up. Investigators began asking questions. The Hollowbrook Foundation issued a statement denying everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. The orphanage itself changed after that night. The oppressive atmosphere lifted. The cold spots disappeared. It felt, for the first time, like just a building, old and damaged, but no longer haunted. Elena stood in the main hall 3 days later, planning the renovation. Artist studios on the second floor. A community space on the first. And in the entryway, a memorial. 47 names carved in stone, children who'd been forgotten but would be forgotten no longer. Margaret joined her, looking at the sketches. What will you call it? The Isabella House, Elena said. A place for artists and dreamers. For people who exist between worlds, who don't quite fit anywhere else. A place that honors what was lost and creates something new. Outside, Birch barked happily, chasing leaves in the clearing. The dog no longer feared the building. Whatever had made him terrified was gone, released, at peace. That night, Elena dreamed. She stood in a bright space filled with children playing, laughing, being children in a way they'd never been allowed to be in life. Isabella stood at the edge, smiling. Thank you, she said again. For giving us back our names. For making us real again, even in memory. Elena woke with tears on her face and a profound sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The mystery of Hollowbrook would never be fully explained. Scientists and skeptics would debate the evidence for decades. Some would call it an elaborate hoax. Others would admit they couldn't explain what had happened in those rooms, in those woods, on that final night. But Elena knew the truth. Some things exist between the cracks of reality. Some children are born straddling worlds. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is refuse to let the impossible be erased. The Hollowbrook home for foundlings had been a place of secrets and suffering. But the Isabella house would be different. It would be a place of light and creativity and memory. A place that acknowledged the strange and beautiful and terrifying truth: reality is bigger than we imagine, and some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only witnessed, honored, and remembered. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of mystery and the unexplained. Your support helps us bring you these stories every week. And if you want to support us in bringing you even more content, consider leaving a comment with your thoughts. We read every single one. Thank you for watching, and remember, some truths are too important to stay buried, no matter how impossible they seem.